The month of May is usually a very, very busy time of the year. Today is only the 10th of May, and in early May we call it mid-spring, and late May is what we would call late spring or even early summer. And this is the time of year when so much happens. This tree was leafless until about a month ago, and all these long shoots that you see here, at least 45 centimeter long, they have all grown in the last 3 weeks. So if you did nothing to it, this tree will become completely out of hand. It's only a fairly thin mountain maple, but already it is so bushy. Most deciduous trees, in fact all deciduous plants, whether they are roses or elm trees or zelkova trees, they all have 2 spurts of growth. The first spurt of growth is in what we call the early spring, and then they have a second spurt of growth from end of June, early July onwards. These are the 2 spurts of growth, and it is at this time of the year, the first spurt of growth, that you've got to control these trees. These are maples, mountain maples, which have been trained into the S shape. Most mountain maples are usually trained as just straight trees and put in a pot, and they sell as very nice bonsai. But if you can create an S in the tree, that is even better. Of course, to create an S shape, you can only do it when the shoots are really young like this, no thicker than a matchstick. When they're pliable, you can wire it into an S. Once they get thicker than this, it becomes virtually impossible to wire it into an S. So these have been wired into an S, and we've got to maintain it in that shape. So let me show you how I'm going to deal with all these trees that I have here. So as I said, the S shape is there, clearly visible, and I'm going to just refine it. So let me do the first stage. So the first step, always, you should know me by now, is I just trim to the outline, irrespective of whether the shoots are crossing or not. Just trim to the outline, and that should be okay. Now, if you weren't skilled at wiring or shaping or refining, as long as you did this, it will be better than leaving it to grow completely unchecked like this. So let me reinforce again. Now this is a tree which has grown about 12 inches all around, and I'm just going to bring it back to its conical shape, and then the next stage is I'm going to show you how to wire it and shape it. So let's do all the 4, trim it back to the outline, and then we will take it to the next stage. Of course, if you keep doing this and do nothing else, this tree could get very congested, and it will become so dense that you'll get a lot of dieback on the inside of the tree. So look at this one. Even the weeds grow very strongly at this time of the year. You must be getting sick of the maples, because we have so many maples, and they are by far the most popular of all the deciduous trees, that if anything, you will either become an expert at maple, or you will not want to see another maple again. So that's what I've done. Now that's not the end of the story. We've got to do more than that. So let's get back to the thin ones first. So here we are. Now this tree here, clearly a very nice S, and we're going to wire the branches so we develop the branch structure much more. And of course, as with most of these deciduous trees, they bud back from the old wood almost willy-nilly. You can't control it. They're so vigorous. So Usually the branches come from the outside of the elbow. This is the elbow. The branches come from outside the elbow. Very seldom will you find the branches coming from inside the elbow. So always think of the branches coming from outside the elbow. So this is a nice branch here because it's coming from outside. That's a nice one which is already developed. Now this one I'm not so sure. That's partly on the inside, but this is a nice one to develop, but this is rather young. So let me show you the options for this. Okay, so if I look at this one in fact is very, very thin. I might just let it grow to get thicker and then I will wire, but this one I won't wire for now, but I can wire those two. Now what wire should I use? I've always said to you that of all the sizes of wire that are available, the two most popular sizes are maybe 1.5 and 2 millimeter. But once you get into something thicker, 2.5 millimeter is also a very useful size of wire to have. So what I'm using now here is 2 millimeter. But remember, again, what I've said in the past, there is no hard and fast rule. You've got to play it by ear. If a tree is more mature, you'll have more mature branches, so it may not need, or it may not be sufficient to use the thin piece, so you may have to use the thicker piece of wire. Sometimes I just wire it in an open coil so as to just guide the branch along. This one I'm going to use as a sacrificial. Now this is a thicker one. There are a lot of congested branches here. When there's congestion, we clear it. This is the inside, I'll take that out. And I wire these two. Now that's a thick one, so I will use 2.5 mil. 2.5 mil, not as thick as 3 mil, so 2.5 should do. So remember, 2.5 to 1.5 are the very popular sizes. Maples mark very easily on the trunk, so you've got to be a bit careful when you wire maples. So since we're only guiding the branch along, there is no need to keep the wire tight, and certainly check it as it grows. So I do what's called an open coil. So it's like a coil of a spring, and it's like a tube almost for the branch to grow along the tube of wire. If you can imagine what I'm saying, it's like an open coil, like a spring, coil of a spring. So that's how we coil it. You see, we don't tighten it, it's just kept loose. It may look a bit messy now, but in about 3 months' time I can take some of it off and see how it's doing. And if it's holding, then I can probably dispense with it. You will also find with most deciduous trees, whether it's a Zelkova or whatever, they tend to have dominant shoots. So let me explain to you what a dominant shoot is. If I come close and show you, these two shoots there, they are the dominant shoots, and it is taking over from the original apex. So you got to be a bit careful. If I remove some of these leaves, I can show you the choice of shoots that we have. They're so prolific, I'm not worried they will grow again. So, if I show you close up, can you see the 3 shoots? This one, and the one at the back. So there are 3 shoots there. Now this was the original apex. And these two are the new vigorous shoots that could become the apex as well. So you have a choice of what to use. If this is the front, I could use the new one, or I could use the old one as well. So there is a choice there. So maybe, even I get foxed sometimes, I will remove the most dominant one, which is this. This is the most dominant. I'm going to take this out. So I've taken that one out. I still have two there. I have one which is coming this way, and I have one at the back there. I could use either of those. So to get a better taper, I may remove the back one. I don't have any fears of the top dying because I know that these maples are so vigorous that they should be okay. So that is the structure dealt with. Okay, and I can then wire the top and give it a slightly twisty look over there. Let me just wire it. So I'm wiring the apex and linking it to a side branch, two branch principle to hold it, and then introducing a slightly curvy bit to continue the S shape. So that is how I have continued to make the tree grow, and at some point it will come back on itself like that. So this is the structure that I've done. So many of you will say, oh, I much prefer it like this, bushy. But this, given another 4 weeks, will become bushy like this. So don't worry. As long as the structure is created, it will fill out and bush up. So let's deal with the second one. This is another of those curly ones. Now this is very interesting too, because I can see that there is a rather tricky or controversial thing here. These very thin branches I will wire with a very thin 1.5 mil wire, because it is really, really thin. I only want to just guide it along. So no need to keep it tight. I'm just putting an open coil like a spring to guide the wire and lead the shoot going in the right direction, but not strangling the branch in any way. So I've just made the branches come down like this, and the branches will thicken. Now this branch is very interesting here. This is something which we don't normally encourage because it's a branch growing on the inside of the curve. But if I removed it completely, it may become too bare. So I will keep the inside. I will keep the inside and see how it goes. So sometimes there are exceptions to the rule, and this is clearly an instance where there is an exception to be made. I'm wiring a branch which is growing on the inside of the elbow, but because the circumstances are right, because if I removed it, it would become too bare. The tree would become too bare in the middle. So I've wired that one on the inside so that I can have some presence there. Now there are some very strong shoots here, if you can see at the back there. This one is a very strong shoot. Very, very strong. I can bend it, I'll try and bend it, but again if I bend it, it'll be on the inside of the curve. So what I may do, I've already chopped a very vigorous shoot over here. Hard to show you if I'm self-videoing. You see how congested it is. This shoot there is very vigorous. That's the one I want to get rid of. I think I've taken it out completely. So I'm just creating structure. So once the structure is created, I will just let it grow, and it should take care of itself when these young thin branches develop and become more mature. In fact, they're so thin, there is probably no need to even wire them. Let's see, I might just guide it along with a very thin piece of wire. So in that case, I might even have to use 1mm wire. Don't worry about making it look like a tree that you would put on an exhibition. We're just training it, so this is the process of training. So don't worry how it looks, because after 3 months you can remove these wires. They're so thin they will have set the tree in position. So that is the tree structure, typical informal upright tree, and the structure is made, and then I will leave it to fill out. So these are the two young ones. So this is what you should be aiming to achieve. Just the structure, nothing else. Now let's look at these two more mature ones. These, as you can see, I have wired them, in fact, a few months ago, before the leaves came out. And because I have structured it, the structure is all right. You can see the beautiful structure being formed. And all I need to do is make sure that there isn't too much congestion in there. The apex is very congested. There's a whole bunch of branches, but I somehow don't need all of them. If I leave too many branches there, you may get what is called the inverse taper, where a whole clutch of branches growing will cause that part of the trunk to thicken, and the lower portion will be thin. So that is what we call inverse taper. Many of you are still wondering what inverse taper is. So that is inverse taper. So I'm making sure I'm thinning that portion out. Sometimes you mustn't try and create too much ramification, because if you create too much ramification, you will get dieback on the inside. So this is a more mature tree. So this tree was really like this only a year ago, and see how much it has developed. I'll put it in a slightly bigger pot. So this is the progression from this to this in 1 year. This is also a slightly more mature tree. Now already I can see that there are lots of faults in this tree. There is the main trunk, which you can see, and then there is this rogue shoot here, which is becoming very dominant, and it's taking away that. So you could create inverse taper. I don't know if you can see it clearly. This bit is an unwanted branch, and if I leave it to grow too much, it will become a problem later on. So this is one of those difficult situations where you literally have to take a rather radical decision, whether you make it like a twin trunk going from there, which looks odd. Can you see? It looks very odd. This branch here. So what do we do? Also, if I bring this branch out here, it's coming or growing from the wrong position. I could keep it as a sacrificial to thicken the trunk, but at some point I will have to remove it. I know that I can sell this tree as a commercial bushy tree, but in all conscience, I couldn't really let it go because this is really a fault. So, as I've often said, this one is a fault. I'm going to take it out. I'm going to take it out. So I've taken that out. There are many options for this tree. There are two branches there. I'll take one of them out. So let's see what we do. Some of you may say I've spoiled the tree, but I won't have spoiled the tree. Let me just wire it and see what shape I can get. So I will use 2.5 mil wire because one of the branches is quite thick. Using the gin pliers just to loop this wire, making an open coil. And this also I'm going to make like an open coil. I'm not wiring the wire tight. I'm just making this open coil. Let me explain to you what the open coil is like. You see, it's just an open coil. It's not tight. So it's like a tube along which the branch is going to grow. the apex, of course, the original apex seems to have died, and this side branch here is tending to be the apex. So this is quite nice because it's coming back on itself. So let's emphasize the new apex by removing some of this foliage. Each of these trees is like a jigsaw puzzle because there are so many options that it becomes very interesting as a problem that you need to solve. Again, there's a lot of congestion at the top. And if I'm not careful, as I said earlier, if there's too much congestion, you'll end up getting inverse taper at that point. So I'm going to take some of that out because I'm really looking to the long term. I'm trying to be a perfectionist here. I know that many of you don't grow these maples into this S shape because the S shape is quite hard to create. But for those of you who are trying to create the S-shaped maple, this is how you deal with the maples. Sometimes it seems very, very drastic because we virtually took a very nice bushy tree, which commercially a lot of people would give the right arm for because it looks nice and bushy. But I know in my heart of hearts that it wouldn't be right to sell that tree because it had a leader going in the wrong direction. So I'm going to now create a tree that is more of a classic style. In fact, this tree I may have to reposition . So again, I'm just making like an open coil, like the coil of a spring, and the branches are just going to grow in that tube of the spring. So it's not really tight wiring, it's just loose wiring to guide the tree along. So I've more or less made the branches grow in the right direction. So everything is growing in the right direction. Very hard to appreciate the tree in 2 dimensions because the camera doesn't record the feeling and the depth of the tree. I'm just trying to give you the best view or angle to see the tree. So these branches are growing this way and those are going that way. I think I'll put it on the turntable and show it to you. So this is a better view now that I'm holding the camera. You can see I made the branch grow from the outside of the elbow. There are two branches, in fact. There's a bit of a gap there. I'm not worried about that. That this is coming out from this elbow. That is also coming out from that elbow. And then the apex will be created. So that will fill out in time. So I'm quite happy with that one. This was a very difficult one because I took out a very, very major thick branch. So I don't know where that branch was, but it was something like that. Thick branch like that I took out. Took out a very thick one. So that will grow into a nice tree. This was the most complete tree which didn't need much doing because this is what I had already worked on last year. So this is the back of the tree. You can see how full it is. They really develop fast. So you don't have to worry. So you can even do a lot of leaf cutting at this time of the year and produce a new crop of leaves. And then you get a lot of refinement. So let me go back to the front of the tree. And you see how nice the dome shape is created. So that is virtually complete. So although I did some severe work on this one, this sparse tree will become like that by the end of this summer. And then the younger trees, which were not so thick, again I created the branch structure, position all the branches so that they grow in the correct way. And the same with this one. So I've made sure that the branches are all going to grow in the correct direction. So this is quite radical work, but for the sake of the tree, it will become nice and classic with all the branches in the correct position. So these are these S-shaped maples that I pruned. Look at some of the branches I took out. Look at that one. This thick one I took out. This was the one. I took this branch out from here. It was growing there. I had to take that out. So I didn't feel bad doing it because I now have a clear conscience that I know that that should have been taken out. It didn't really belong there. It was like growing with two heads or two leaders. So I took that out, and that tree is going to have all the branches in the correct position. So I hope this has given you some insight. So if you have young maples and they're still wireable, make it into an S, grow it in a big flower pot to get it strong, and then you can create the branch structure. So this is how some of our big maples are created, from young maples like this. So I hope you've enjoyed this one.